Welcome back to Career Pathways. My name is Don Bowers, and this is part 3 of Conquering the Pi. Other software needed on the Raspberry Pi, and again, this is for the purpose of penetration testing. If you've not watched part 1 and part 2 of Conquering the Pi, may I suggest you do so, as it will give a lot of lead into this particular video. Now, this particular video is actually pretty simple and straightforward. In this video, I actually want to install other software that a penetration tester might need. The first one I'm going to install is called Quake. This is actually an alternate terminal software. I like it a lot because it allows me to change and reconfigure a lot of the properties, such as a hotkey rather than have to go find terminal. I can just press the F1 key, for example, is how I like to program mine. I think the default is actually F12, but I find F1 easier to use. I can set the transparency. I can do a bunch of other types of things. I can change the font size, which is a big help to me. So no matter what the Kali Linux I'm working on looks like as far as how tiny the print is, I can adjust that pretty much on the fly. I really like the program. This originally was developed for the GNOME interface, but it runs fine on a Raspberry Pi and does not, in my opinion, take too much overhead. Another one I'm going to install will be GEdit, and I will install and configure that, because with GEdit, it's just a graphic editor. It does not come installed on the Raspberry Pi, although it does come installed on the regular version of Kali Linux, not the Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to install that. GEdit is a great text editor. Not only can I change and configure fonts and things like that, colors, I can also turn on line numbering, which I find to be very helpful when modifying and editing text files. LibreOffice is another program that I find especially helpful for any penetration tester. You can do word processing, spreadsheets, and those types of things. Oftentimes when I'm doing a penetration test, I need to write some quick documentation, and LibreOffice gives me that ability to do it right there on the device that I'm using for the penetration test. WhyCD, Wireless Network Manager, it's also called Wicked, is an excellent wireless network manager. So if you want to hook into somebody else's wireless or whatever, you've got a graphic interface. It's really it does that very well, by the way. Fern Wi-Fi Cracker, another program. If you're going to use a dictionary tag against a WPA type of crack, then Fern Wi-Fi Checker is a great alternative to things like Airmon NG and those tools. WhyFight is a wireless penetration testing tool. There's also one called Preload. Preload is going to preload dependencies into memory for faster access. Bleach Pit is another program that I find useful. It frees disk space, deletes cookies, and cache. So if your Pineapple, or your, sorry, not your Pineapple, but if your Raspberry Pi is going to be discovered and you need to delete certain files, this can do it very quickly. Bum is going to disable any unnecessary applications at boot time, so it's going to help the Pi boot a little bit faster. Scrub is a secure deletion program, so if you need to delete files from your Raspberry Pi, this will do it in a secure manner. Shutter, this can capture an image of your desktop. So if you have something up on the screen and you need to capture that image and take a screenshot, Shutter does that very well. And then Websploit is also another penetration testing set of tools. So those are the tools that I want to install, and really the installation of each of these is really very straightforward. There's really nothing hard about it, and once you start installing the software, you can probably even get way ahead of me on the video, but I did want to do a video on it because these are the applications that I like to run on my Raspberry Pi by default. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started installing other software for penetration testing. So here we are back on Kali Linux, and the one thing I did do is I went ahead and loaded Kali with the GUI interface using, I believe this one's actually using Tiny VNC or Tight VNC. I really like the program. It does a good job. And again, this allows me to do some scaling and that type of thing. The other thing I want to do before I start installing software is I really want to change the background. This background's fine, but I keep getting the mouse lost because of the different colors. And so I want to show you how to change the background. And really the easiest way to do this is simply go to your browser. And here's how I like to do it. There are a variety of ways you can do this. And I'm going to open the browser. You double click it. And as I open the browser, there we go. And I've probably got two copies of it open just because I know that I clicked that twice, and that's fine. This browser has not been opened yet, and that's why it took a minute to open, and that's fine. I'm simply going to go to Bing. And in Bing, I'm going to type in Kali Linux wallpaper. Now, if you just type in Kali wallpaper, you're liable to get women. So make sure you specify Kali Linux. And then I'm going to click on images because this will actually give me just images, and it makes this a lot easier to do. And I want to move this down a little bit if I can, because there are a bunch of images here. There we go. And I just want to pick one. There's a lot of really great images here. Some of them are really cool. Some of them you may not like at all. Kind of depends on you, who you are, what you like. I've used a variety of these at times, and a lot of times what I'll do, for example, I have several Raspberry Pis. In fact, I think I actually have 4 of them. One Raspberry Pi 1, one Raspberry Pi 2, and I think I have 2 Raspberry Pi 3s. So I use Raspberry Pis quite a bit, and let's pick this one just because I don't think I've used this one yet. And depending on the Raspberry Pi, I may choose to use a particular one for a particular Pi. So just when I log in, I immediately then know exactly which one it is. And I find that to be very helpful. I'm going to right click, and let's see if I can change the wallpaper. I may need to actually save this. Looks like I do need to save it. So I'm going to go ahead and save the image as. And this is going to save it to my Pi. And I'm going to go ahead and pick root. And I want to save this in downloads. And I'm going to tell it, go ahead and save the image. And now if I go to my file manager, let me get out of my browser. I'm going to go ahead and not have it warn me when I want to go ahead and close. And then this just told me Iceweasel was running because I actually did press that twice. And that's fine. I can handle a little bit of flack if I need to, right? I'm going to go ahead and go to downloads, and there's the image. I'm going to right click, and I'm simply going to say set as wallpaper. And there it is. So now I have a little bit different wallpaper. I like to use a variety of wallpapers. I just think it makes my job as a pen tester a little easier. So there's a new wallpaper. And what you'll find is when we start using things like Quake, you'll be able to still see this image in the background. It's kind of cool. So the first thing I'm going to do then is install Quake, and I will need to go to a terminal program to do it. So I'm going to do an apt-get install Quake, G-U-A-K-E. And it's going to ask if I want to install it. The answer is yes. Now when I install Quake, I want to do a couple things. I'm going to want to set some properties. I also want this to automatically start when Kali starts, and there's 2 ways I can do it. Remember back when I installed X11 VNC in the Conquering the Pi Part 2 video, and I went into config, and I went into another folder called auto start, and I made a file called xvnc or x11vnc.desktop. Well, I can do exactly the same thing with Quake. However, I can also use my startup manager that's graphic based to do the same thing, and that is in fact what I'll do with this one. Remember, I mentioned that it did not install the files I wanted to have configured correctly when I did with X11VNC. I don't find that to be a problem with Quake, so I'll go ahead and do it. Since I'm already in graphic mode, I'll go ahead and use graphics to do this. And this does take a minute to install. There's a couple of applets here that install very quickly. There's a couple that take a few minutes, Quake being one, and there you see it's actually done. Another one would be LibreOffice. Takes a few minutes to install. So I want to be careful when I install those to make sure they install properly. Now I can actually run Quake in a couple different ways. I can actually run it here from the terminal, or I can do this. Close, go down to search, and type in Quake, G-U-A-K-E, and now you'll see I can either run the preferences or I can run Quake terminal, and I indeed want to run preferences. So I'm going to go ahead and click on preferences, and I did have to double click that, and here's my Quake preferences. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to run this full screen, because I just like having things full screen. So I'm going to start this in full screen mode by checking that box right there. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to look at appearance, and I'm going to disable this function right here, and I'm going to set my font size at, let's just say, quite a bit bigger. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to press the down button, and I'm probably going to go, I don't know, probably in this one, let's see what that looks like, maybe one more. I think I like that better. And I'm going to tell this OK. Now I can also check this box. I can use fonts and desktop background colors, or I can actually choose from a particular palette. I'm going to go ahead and leave this right here and use this, but I have some really great options. And then transparency, I'm going to kick that up a notch. I don't want it real transparent, but I like to just see through it a little bit because it looks cool. So I'll try it about there. And then the next one I want to do is I want to reassign the keyboard. You can see that the keyboard right now is assigned to F12 to start. I don't want F12, I want F1. Now, let me explain what I'm giving up. Right now, if I press F1 inside Kali, I'm probably going to get a help screen. And I just pressed F1, and I should get a help screen. And maybe it won't come up here. It could be behind this. That's fine, doesn't matter. But I don't care about that. I know I can get to help anytime I want. So I'm going to reach over here and press the F12 with my mouse, and I'm going to tell it I want to use F1. And because I'm remoting in, I have to do a Shift F1, just so you know. And then right down here where it says New Tab, I want to press my button, and I'm going to press Shift F2. So I want Shift F1 and Shift F2. And the only reason I say Shift is because I am remote controlling this. I have to use the Shift key in conjunction with the function key. And that's just not a big problem. So that's that. And now if I press the Shift F1, I should get Quake. And I may need to restart this. Oh, that's because I haven't actually started Quake yet. So let me go back and actually start Quake. I did preferences, but I didn't start it. So now let me start Quake. Okay, now Quake did start. We can see over here that it started. If I do my Shift F1, now you see I have Quake running. And here's what it would look like. So I just kind of, I don't know, I kind of like this. So there's Quake. I like the program. Now, one of the other things that I find a little bit annoying in here is you'll notice there's a line up here, there's a bar for applications. And what I need to do is have that kind of go away, because as you can see, it gets in the way of the first line of my terminal window. So if I just simply right click here and I go down here to panel and I go to panel preferences, all I need to do to fix this is instead, I'm going to say automatically hide. Instead of say never, I'm going to say let's do it right there. Let's do it intelligently. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit close. And now watch what happens when I hit Shift F1. I like this. You see it goes away. So now I'm not missing the top line here. I just get my terminal window in and out. And yes, this is a little harder on graphics, but it really isn't bad. I mean, it works great, and I love the application. Now, if this is too much opaqueness, anytime I want, I can right-click here. While I'm in Quake, I can go back to Preferences, and I can back this opaqueness off just by going into Appearance again and taking it down just a little bit like that. Once I've done that, I'll hit Close. And then the next time I go into Quake, you see it's not as opaque. The icons here sometimes can kind of get in the way here in Kali, and so I've learned that sometimes I want that a little bit less opaque, but it's kind of cool. So I use that quite a bit. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and go to Clear, and I need to install a couple of other applications. And you can see this still keeps the history. Now I want to do GEdit, so I'm going to type apt-get install GEdit. And I'm going to really try hard not to miss an amp. I've got a pretty long list here, and it's possible that I could get down the list and actually forget one. And if I do that, I really apologize. I don't know that I'd go back and redo the entire video just for that. I do want to take some time to configure a couple of these. Most of these don't need configuring at all. They just simply need to be installed. Once I install all these apps, a lot of times they will do a GP update and a GP upgrade to make sure that everything has its latest and newest versions. Make sure it hits the repositories as it's supposed to and everything gets updated. So I will do that periodically as I'm using Kali. So you can see I'm already at 70+%. And by the way, you'll notice the font on Quake is quite nice, and I can again change that depending on the size screen I'm using and so forth. Now the nice thing about this is we've already told it exactly the size screen to use through our mode commands in the Conquering the Pi on the second video, part 2. So there we see it's installed. Now it's going to go ahead and uncompress some things. And then I will show you how to configure this because I like to have this configured as well. And I use these two programs whether I'm using the Raspberry Pi or whether I'm using VMware or whether I've got my PC in the back of my office here that's actually running a full copy of Kali on its own machine. I still use GEdit, which of course comes installed on the standard copy of Kali, and I also use Quake, which is not. So I try to make sure I have all the same software if I can running on my my Pi or whatever platform I'm using. I try to make sure the same software gets installed. It's important for me to be able to bounce from one to another and still have access to the same stuff. And as with all Linux-based installs, there's a lot of little files that have to be updated and all that kind of stuff. So we just have to be patient and kind of wait for them. This actually doesn't take too long. LibreOffice will take considerably longer, and I guarantee you I will pause the videos during the LibreOffice install because it just takes too long to want to burn video time. I'm hoping this doesn't take much longer, and if it does, I will pause the video. And of course, everybody knows how that works. As soon as I pause the videos, it will be finished. So I'm a little bit reticent to pause the video knowing that when I do, it'll finish anyway. So and you can see, by the way, this is unpacking things specific for GNOME. GEdit was built for GNOME. although many other distributions of Linux use GEdit. Or LeafPad. The older versions of Linux used to use, of Kali used to use LeafPad, now they use GEdit. But again, it's a really great editor. And so I'll go ahead and pause the video because I don't want to burn time on this. So let me pause the video and I'll come back when this thing is finished. Okay, now GEdit has finished loading, and the first time I ran GEdit, I did get some errors, just some warnings, not really some errors, and that's fine. If I go ahead and run GEdit, I can run it from here, and again, there's those warnings, and I'm not sure why those are there. I probably need to do an update and an upgrade to get rid of those, and that will happen soon enough. Depending on the copy of Kali you're running, sometimes there is a preferences bar up here at the top. Here it's actually located right here in this pull down menu. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and I'm going to go ahead and go to preferences because I want to make some changes to this interface. And so I'm going to go ahead and go over to fonts, and I'm going to use this darker font like this. You see that totally changed the complexity of what this looks like. And I also want to use some different size fonts. So here's my size, my font sizer. I'm just going to hit the plus button, and then I can actually take a look at that and say save. And then the other thing I want to do is, I think I'm back on this view. I think I can go ahead and tell it to display line numbers. So now you can see I'm actually displaying line numbers. I'll go ahead and tell it to close, and then we can see as I'm looking at text, and now you can see I have line numbers, and the text is pretty good size, so it's easier for me to use. And I can control just a lot of really cool things here, and I find this works best for me. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm not going to save this, I'll just close it. And again, I will get rid of these errors whenever I install, whenever I go ahead and, so this is giving a bunch of warnings. They're not really errors, they're warnings. And it's just a parsing error. It's not going to cause me any grief or anything like that, but as soon as I do an update, my guess is these will all go away. Okay, I can also run GEdit from here. If I just go to search and type in GEdit, it's right there. So I can run this variety of ways. Like that. And it will run just like that. And you see there's no particular errors, it just ran. So not a problem there. Okay, there's some other applets I want to install. The next one being LibreOffice. So I'll do an apt-get. Install, LibreOffice. And again, this one does take a long time to install, and there really isn't any configuration. And on most of these applications now, there isn't a lot of configuration, except in Video 4, we will be installing an app that's going to require a bit of, not real configuration, but a bit of setup. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this video because I don't want to burn a lot of video time. This will take about 10 minutes or so to install. So I'll be right back when LibreOffice is finished installing. Okay, as you can see now, LibreOffice has finished installing. I'm just going to go ahead and go back to my desktop. I'm going to go to search. I'm going to type in Libre, and you can see there's LibreOffice. And here comes LibreOffice version 5. And of course, I can open up a document, for example, and here is a full-blown word processor. Now, this is not Microsoft Office, but I'm going to tell you, for most people that do any kind of word processing that's not real specialized, you just hear banging out documents, man, LibreOffice is a great solution. In fact, if I wasn't tied into using Microsoft Office for work, I would have no trouble at all running LibreOffice at home. I love this piece of software. And now you can use it to write reports and documentation right here on your Raspberry Pi as you're doing penetration testing. The next one I wanted to install is the wireless network manager called Wicked. So apt-get install WICD, and here it comes. Yes, I want to install it. And if I remember correctly, this one doesn't actually take a very long time to install. And as most of these now don't, some may take a minute or two, but you can see this is already downloaded and processing triggers and such. So it's not long after you see that the installation will be complete. And I'm going to go ahead and type in WICD, and that's going to launch this little applet. And that did not like something. Let me just go back over here, and again, I may need to do an update WICD, and there's the Wicked program. And this may have issues. Well, there it is. No issues at all. So there it is, and this is the manager for wireless networking, and I can do a lot of really great things, create ad hoc networks and so forth. This is just one of those little apps that I like to see running on my copy of my Raspberry Pi. The next one I want to install is going to be Fern Wi-Fi cracker, so I'm going to do an apt-get install FERN dash Wi-Fi cracker. This is one of those apps that actually comes in Kali if you do a full install, but this is really for wireless hacking, hacking WPA2, that kind of thing. I find it's an exceptional application, and I like to have it in my arsenal of tools. And you can see I'm already at about 50%. Repositories are truly a wonderful thing because they allow us to garner a lot of different pieces of software off in the same place. And I really like that about Linux. You do need to have the correct repositories installed. Fortunately for us, Kali Linux comes with the correct ones installed. And that hasn't always been the case. There's been a lot of times I've had to go out and actually update the repositories. This is going to ask me for some information. And again, on this, I'm probably going to go ahead and just choose the default. Again, this is a pen testing tool. I don't care who runs the applications on this thing. I prefer root or whoever's logged in to be able to do that. So not a big issue as a pen testing tool. And we should be just about finished. And there we are. So let me go ahead and go run Fern real quick. Again, I don't want to demo each of these apps, but I just want to make sure they actually got installed. And there's Fern Wi-Fi Cracker. I love this search tool. It just makes it so easy to find things in Kali. Oh, and other distributions of Linux as well. So there it is. And I actually don't want to load professional. I'm going to say don't show this again. There is a Fern Professional. It does cost, but this is Fern Wi-Fi Cracker. Very cool tool. Again, one I like having in my arsenal of tools. We can go ahead and install the next one, which happens to be one called WhyFight, and that is WIFIT. Oops, I misspelled it. Let's see if I can get that right again. WIFIT. There we go. I like that much better. And once this is installed, the rest of these tools will actually install very quickly, so we won't be waiting around very long for any of them to install. Well, I see this is already past 60%, 70%. And again, I'm going to press Enter to pick up any defaults that need to be there. And this should be just about finished. Now, I'm not going to actually run Wi-Fi right now. We can do that later in another video, but I do want to go ahead and install it because it, again, is one of the tools that I like to run. Now, these are all so far pretty much tools I like. Now comes to the type of the part of the tools that are really more like for system maintenance to make the system run better. You know, things like Scrub and Bleach Pit and those types of tools are really to make Kali a little more functional as a pen testing tool as well. But they're not necessarily apps normal people would load, but they're certainly ones we're going to load for penetration testing. So there, we're finished with that one. So I'm going to go ahead and load one called Preload. I believe that's its name. Looks good to me. And this is now at the very end. There we go. The next one I want to install is called Bleach Pit. Okay, there's Bleach Pit. Now I want to install one called BUM, which is BUM. BUM is going to disable any necessary startup routines programs. Then after that, we're going to do Scrub, which is a secure deletion program. Now you could put these in a script, and if you were doing a lot of Raspberry Pi installs, you could just put these in a script and just install it from a script. I've done that as well. So we're going to go ahead and do Scrub. After Scrub is going to, we're going to install one called Shutter. Shutter will allow you to take screenshots. Excuse me. So we'll go ahead and install Shutter. And then not last but not least, the last one we're going to actually install in this video is called WebSploit. And WebSploit is a whole series of different kinds of tools. WebSploit will do things like exploit WordPress, those types of websites. That's WebSploit. Again, very popular tool to have on a penetration testing environment. Okay, that installed. And one final application is going to be a WebSploit. Once this particular piece of software installs, and it should be pretty quickly now, I'm going to go ahead and do an apt-get update and an apt-get upgrade. And the reason I want to do that, and I will pause the videos during the upgrade process, is I want to make sure all my software and all the dependencies the software has are all working properly. So let me do an apt-get update. So this is going to go out and find the software. It's going to look it up in repositories. It's going to then know exactly what it needs to do, and all that kind of cool stuff. So let's let it do that. And then as we do the upgrade, we'll of course need to pause the videos while I do that, and we'll come back after that for a final few moments. So we can see that that's done. Well, almost done anyway. Okay, that's done. And now we're going to go ahead and do an upgrade. And remember, when we do the upgrade, we do a -y. And this may take a few minutes, so I'll come back when this is finished. Okay, so I went ahead and rebooted my Raspberry Pi, and I forgot to do one thing, and that was to allow Quake to automatically run, because I just brought my Pi back up, and guess what? It's not running. So let me do that real quick. I'm going to go ahead and go to Search and type in Session, and there I'm going to go ahead and go to the Application Startup. I'm going to add, and I'm going to simply type in Quake, TRMINAL, software, and I will simply type in the command Quake. And now it should automatically run for me. I'll close this. I'm not going to reboot, but I will go ahead and type in Quake just to get it back up and running here. But I know that next time I boot, it will run. And there's my terminal package again. And it is indeed running in the background, and there it is. So now that everything is running properly, I'm going to go ahead and I will see you in the next video when we install and configure the Tor browser.